Yeah, and I have two, and I meant to print it up for you and I forgot. If it's possible for me to make some printouts and copies tonight, I will do it. It's a list of fairy tales that you might tell to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old. And some of them are Grimm, some of them are English, and some of them are Russian. Yes?
I've got a question. To contextualise fairy tales, that we don't really have any Australian ones, could you call Indigenous Dreamtime stories fairy? Or are they something else?
Well, I'm not familiar with them, but if they're ancient stories that are...
Stories like, you know, how the birds got their colours and are they?
Yeah, I think they would. I don't know whether you'd call them fairy tales.
No, you wouldn't call them fairy tales.
But they're
creation stories.
They're creation stories and myths, and we have a lot of those in Native American literature too. And usually they're done around 2nd or 3rd grade.
With like a lot of the fairy tales, going right back when they first started, they would have maybe had a lot more meaning. Like even though the English ones get the kings and queens. Well, to people living in England, that makes a lot of sense. To people living in Australia, it doesn't actually make a lot of sense because we don't have kings and queens.
But children still identify with kings and queens, and they love to wear crowns and
to want to be a princess.
And to be a princess. That really shows us that we're not talking about kings and queens here. We're talking about the youthful feminine within us, and the mature feminine within us. It's not about Queen Elizabeth who's sitting over halfway around the
But a lot
world.
of fairy tales do have like a lot of meaning. Like we had like the one Ringa Ringa Rosie, Crazy, or like some doctor told me that was actually, you know, like
The pops.
yeah, and tissue will fall down, like people dying. I don't think a lot of people know a lot of the meanings behind fairy tales, like all rhymes.
Yes.
They have a lot of meaning behind them.
They do, but that kind of meaning doesn't have to be, I mean, somebody dying of the plague, you really don't need to share that. For children who lived in that time, it was meaningful, because they saw people dropping dead in the street. It might be very meaningful to the children in a tsunami to come up with a story like that, who watched their families die. But it's a fun story to ring around and fall down, and that's all our children really need to know. If they get more meaning out of it by taking it into their sleep life, great, you know. And children do, on some level, between ages birth and 7, deal with death. There are children who die in that period of time. And death is a choice. On some level, death is a choice, even if it's accidental. And I remember my granddaughter, when she was about 4, saying, "You know, Grandma, I could die if I want." And I said, "Well, yes, Robin, you can if you want. I hope you don't, because we'd really miss you, but you can if you want." And that's the meaning of childhood illnesses and all of the things that they need to go through things that make their body stronger, and sometimes a high fever will do that. Sometimes a serious disease will do that. And sometimes they need a way out. This isn't the life they wanted, or they finished their mission.
That's right.
They've done what they needed to do. Maybe teach you a lesson. And it's a gift. It's really hard to, I choke up when I even think about it. But I know people who have lost children and have come to terms with it on that basis. It was a gift. And this child sacrificed his life to give you a gift. So you have to accept it at some point. Another thing, fevers. There's a wonderful story about my youngest grandson. He would get really high fevers, frighteningly high fevers. and never develop any other symptoms from whatever it was that was attacking his body. And this one particular time, my daughter had a rule that if his temperature got to 104, she would give him some fever-reducing thing, either wipe him with wet cloths or she would give him some kind of medication to bring the fever down. Well, his fever got to 104 one night and a little bit over 104, and she sent his dad to get the medication and the wet cloths. And he woke up and he said, "Mommy, no medicine, I'm almost done." And a few minutes later, the fever broke and he broke into a sweat, and the next morning he was fine. And almost every time he had one of these fevers, he would have some new skill. He would suddenly learn to tie his shoes the next day, or he'd suddenly learn how to skip after one of these fevers. It just made the shift that he needed to develop some new skill or some new ability.
Scary way
So,
of doing it.
what?
It's a scary way of doing it.
Yes, it is. But what a lesson for her. And it's given me the opportunity to share this with hundreds of people. So that's the gift that he has given. So dealing with death, you don't need to tell them that people died of the plague. But on some level, they may take it inside their sleep life and realize that death is with us all the time. And we all have to die of something sooner or later. And if you know and understand that, it makes the fear of it much less of a thing. And we tend in Western culture to hide death and not deal with it. And I think having our children aware of it, not in a violent way, not watching people shoot each other, but realizing that it's a transition, it's not an ending so much.
Pets is a good example for kids. Pets,
Yeah.
like the cat dies, or
Yeah.
it's an introduction to this is what.
Yeah, and most children have to deal with it sooner or later, at least with a pet or a grandparent or something.
There's a book outside honouring death, the one of St. Francis. Child book.
Circle of Life. Circle of Life.
Yeah.
Good book, that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to get.
Yes.
I have two quick questions. Can you just tell me a couple of well-known stories for 4-year-olds? Because all the stories that we've discussed today are obviously not appropriate for 4-year-olds by the sound of it.
Sweet porridge is a nice one. The turnip, not Grimm's turnip,
Yeah.
the Russian turnip. The gingerbread man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll try to print that out.
My second question goes back to something we talked about earlier, but my son's now saying, how do they make shoes? How do they make cars? How do they make this? How do they make that? What's a good response for these type of technical questions?
That's really hard in our day because most of us wear Nikes. And I couldn't tell you how to make a Nike.
Thongs was what
In the
he asked specifically.
Hmm?
So, just telling they come from a factory and people make them.
Yeah, I've said that a couple of times, but
That's kind of,
When that young, they want to know how
yeah, he's
everything works.
obviously really
That's
trying
kind of copying out
well,
on it, isn't it?
and it's possible to make a pair of moccasins. And my daughter actually did that with her son when he was about 5. It was a kit that he laced together
Yeah.
and he gave them to his dad for Christmas. So that would probably answer the question. Even if he's not able to do the whole job himself, you can help him do it.
Yeah.
And then he sees at least how to make moccasins.
There's a great video somebody made called Flip Flopsy, which follows the story of flip-flops being made in a factory in Africa, then blowing out somewhere in a country in Africa, then getting washed out to sea, and they actually followed it, and like barnacles grew on it and all this stuff. It's a really neat little 28-minute video I saw. I could probably tell you how to get a hold of it. There's a organization in the U.S. called spiritualcinemacircle.com or .org. But anyway, they have these really neat short movies which illustrate things like that. But it was a really fun, like, they actually caught this little crab living on it as it was floating, and then it washes back to shore, and then the people in some small northern village turned them into children's toys. Because they're really colorful, you know, they cut them out into fishes and made little mobiles out of them, and then shipped them back to the city they floated out of originally. So it shows this circle of trash, basically.
So, you know, things like that, sometimes you have to be really creative to answer a question, but it can be done. Now, in Steiner schools, when Steiner was alive, and still in some schools, they actually do shoemaking in the high school, or in the junior high school. They make very intricate things. At Green Meadow, a few years ago, I don't know if they're still doing it, each child made a hammered dulcimer and learned how to play it. You know, they do things like that are very difficult and meaningful. In the 5th grade in most Waldorf schools, they knit 4-needle socks. And I did it with my granddaughter when she was in 5th and 6th grade. She was homeschooled, and she was really proud of those socks. So rather than wear them out in shoes, she turned them into slipper socks. She put a leather bottom on them so she could wear them for slippers in the wintertime. So, you know, these questions may not get answered when he's 4 years old, but if you follow the curriculum, they will get answered at some point by making the thing.
I just had a thought, just make it out of cardboard, put his foot in it and cut around and then put holes in it and tie him up with leather or rope, or you can wear them
But I
for
mean,
the day.
it's not just shoes, it's everything. How do they make glass? How do they make...
Ask him how he thinks it's made and find out.
Yeah, sometimes I reciprocate it back. Yeah.
You get some fantastic answers,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And I think sometimes even just a trial attempt to find out how it might work, that satisfies some of the curiosity and puts
And the
some
time
questions and answers back into the system, and it's just like, oh yeah, something to ponder upon. And
But it's interesting, you know, like about the sun setting. Well, the example you gave was not the true answer to the question in a technical sense, but gave them an answer. But in this sense, we're talking about giving them some kind of real answer. Yes?
Well, for something like glass, you can make some magical way, you know, well, actually, lightning will sometimes form glass. It will strike down into some sand, and it will turn the sand into a rock that you can see through. And you might even be able to find a piece of such volcanic glass or lightning glass and show it to them and say, you know, nature can make glass. And that usually solves it for a while anyway. And remember that a lot of their why questions are conversation starters.
Yeah.
They don't really want the answer. They want you to talk to them. And I remember Tom's next older brother. He got to be a real chatterbox. And he would just go on and on and on. And I'd go, uh-huh, uh-huh, yes, Johnny, uh-huh, uh-huh. And one day he said, Mommy, why do you keep saying that nasty word to me? And I said, what nasty word? I don't say nasty words to you. That, uh-huh, you're not listening. You know, so a lot of their meandering is for you to pay attention and give them some kind of meaningful answer that's a little better than uh-huh, but doesn't have to be a complete explanation of what it is that they're asking either. Are there other questions regarding the story, or stories, or any other of what's been presented today?
This one last quick question. Regarding fantasy versus real life, it's no problem when they're little to not know the difference between what is fantasy and what is real life, or?
It's perfectly okay for them to be, what you'd regard as confused about it.
Yeah. You
But
don't- there's no problem there.
it's not confusion. That's where they are. And they're in a place that we can't anymore access because we've put that too far behind us. And so our children can often bring the spirit world to us by recognizing that their so-called confusion is really what's really real. More so than this table or these things that I can touch so easily.
Can I extend on that one? My daughter, she's 5, and sometimes, for instance, when I ask her, have you brushed your teeth? And she would say, yes, I have. Or have you washed your hands? Yes, I did. And I know that she's gone past.
Well, yesterday I did.
Yeah. And I guess maybe in her mind she's like, yeah, I want to do that, but no, I'm not doing that. So, and I find it sometimes like, she's, in some ways she's not telling the truth, but I don't want to say, well, you're lying to me, that's bad, but like, I know that you just didn't do it, so come on, we go back and do it.
Well,
What is-
sometimes it's because you asked the question, have you brushed your teeth? Well, of course, you brushed them yesterday and the day before, and the day before, and the day before. So it's not a lie. And how often do we think, even as adults, that we did something when we really dreamed it? I often think I wrote a letter to somebody when I only wrote it in my mind, and I never put it on paper and put a stamp on it and sent it. You know, I've so thoroughly worked over that letter in my mind that I think I've sent it. And I have a friend who's very artistic, and she'll often write to me and say, you know, I can't remember if I wrote to you or not. Did you get a letter from me? So, it's not a lie.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
but still something, well, we have to, I guess, approach it and handle it in a way, so to just get the teeth brushing done.
And how old is she?
She's 5.
Well, from that standpoint, you probably need to go with her in the bathroom and help her brush her teeth. And a lot of dentists say you should brush their teeth for them until they're about 6 or 7 anyway.
Yes.
And then it's your memory that's accurate or not hers.
And
Yes.
like you said, they don't have logic. They
Yeah,
don't have
that's
logic.
right. They
My
don't.
6-year-old does that, and I can just see she's got too many things going in her head. She's thinking of the bird, and so she thinks, oh yeah, I have washed my hands, you know, but she hasn't. So I
Yeah, so you really have to supervise those things until they're pretty much around 7 before they can accurately remember if they did that kind of thing or not. And if they did it thoroughly, you know, they stick their hands under the water and then wipe the dirt on the towel. Yeah, sure, I wash my hands on the towel. So, you know, it takes supervision, sometimes more than we want to give. But that attention is worth giving because it makes your life easier later. Things are done thoroughly and then when you do put them off on their own, they know exactly what it is that's necessary. Yes.
My story that I had to tell was a sad one. It was about the little jug. So if you're an emotional person like I was anyway, how do you relate that to the children? Because, you know, like in a sad situation, because in the story it said about a mother whose child died. So how do you relate that without you actually getting emotional, or is it okay that you're emotional as well?
Absolutely okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean,
It doesn't
it's
affect
okay
them
for
though,
them.
because they see you crying and upset because of this, you know, that there's been the death or...
Well, when somebody dies, we miss